I'm making this video because I've noticed that in the midst of this conversation about police brutality and systemic racism, a lot of facts and stats have been getting thrown around. And it can be a little difficult to navigate them all because sometimes you'll find some stats that seem to be contradicting each other. And you're like, how can these both be true at the same time? And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a statistician. I'm not a professional researcher by any means. So I could be very wrong about everything that I'm about to say in this video. This is just my personal attempt to reconcile some of the stats that I've been hearing that sound contradictory, okay? And so that being said, like, I could be wrong and I'm open to correction. One stat that has been leveled at by predominantly white conservatives when it comes to police brutality is that more white people get killed by cops every year than black people do. And then black liberals or black Democrats will respond back, well, but that's not true because black people are 2.5 times more likely to get killed by the cops than white people are. Which one is true? Do more white people get killed or do more black people get killed? Like which side is right? And so this is my attempt at reconciling those two facts. So here's the first stat. Do more white people get killed every year by the cops than black people do? Turns out they actually do. More white people get killed every year by the police than black people do. This is a fact. We can't dispute that. So black people, we have to acknowledge that. That's not a lie. That's actually true. But it doesn't negate our suffering. It doesn't negate our pain. But we can't be ignorant and respond to that fact and say like, no, that's a lie. Like you twisted that. That's not true. That is a bona fide fact. However, it's not the full picture. Yes, more white people get killed by the cops every year, but black people are still more likely to get killed by cops. So how do you reconcile those two facts? Here's how I would explain it. Remember when Corona first came out and we were all confused trying to figure out how deadly is this virus? Some scientists were like, well, don't worry about it because the flu kills more people every year than Corona does. Then some other scientists were like, no, hold on. But that's true, but coronavirus has a higher mortality rate than the flu does, so we should be worried about it. So it turned out that the kill count was different than the kill rate. And because even though the flu had a higher body count, corona kills people more efficiently and quicker. And so because of that, it's in a sense more deadly. I think it's the same thing when it comes to police brutality versus whites and blacks. Police brutality against whites is like the flu. It has a higher body count. But police brutality against blacks is like corona. It's way more efficient. There's a higher rate. And so in that sense, it's deadlier. And that's why we protest in a sense. And so that's my way of kind of reconciling those facts. But there's another reason why this stat is troubling to me. More white people get killed by cops every year than black people do. But my question is, why aren't white people protesting? I mean, I could be wrong. And maybe it's kind of like when white people say, why don't black people talk about black on black crime? It's because we don't talk about it to you. Like we talk about it amongst each other in our own communities, but it's really not anybody else's business. So we don't really broadcast it. So it could be that white people are protesting these things, but we people of color don't see it because we're not living in those communities that do protest. And that could be very well possible. And so what I'm about to say here, I don't have stats to cover them. This is all just observational. I'm going off of things that do or do not make it into social media, like whether if they're posted on Facebook, posted on Instagram, posted on Twitter, or if Fox News covers it. Like this is what I'm going off of. Like, do these things make it to our consciousness in the media? And so that's where, so I'm admitting that I don't have stats and figures to back this next part up. But there's a pattern that seems to emerge when it comes to what white people protest about. And when I mean by white people, I'm specifically addressing like white conservatives. You have these police brutality cases against white people, and it seems like there's not that much white protest. But then you also have this, the cases of mass shootings in the US over the last 30 years, broken down by race. And as you can see, the majority of mass shooters in the US over the last 30 years have been white, which is something that we kind of all knew subconsciously, but now we know statistically that most of the shooters have been white. Now, again, here, I didn't really see much protest from white conservatives against white mass shooters. But then something interesting happened. White and sometimes colored Democrats, leftists, whatever, liberals, started protesting for gun control. And then, all of a sudden, white conservatives stepped up and said, no, don't take our guns. And now this concerns me because it seems like the pattern is this. White kids were getting killed by cops. White conservatives didn't say anything. White kids were killing other people's kids in mass shootings. White conservatives didn't say anything. Then when white liberals said we should have gun control, white conservatives protested and lost their minds. Why are you protesting for this and not for that? I could be wrong. Is it that you really have been protesting this entire time, but you just don't share it with people of color because it's none of our business? That's valid. But if that's the case, I think that would be an interesting piece to bring to the conversation because honestly, and this is coming from a black person, I think that would be a legitimate argument against Black Lives Matter. Because now you can honestly say, hey, we've been protesting against the brutality done to us, but now you come along with Black Lives Matter and it takes the attention off of our protest. That would be a valid argument. But if you don't say that, then we don't know. Or maybe we can work together. But from my understanding, that protesting hasn't been happening. And so it makes me wonder, why is that? But either way, if you have been protesting or you haven't, I think this would be an interesting area to explore. So maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm okay either way. I just think it would be an interesting piece of the conversation to add to and explore.